Adhyatmam karma chilhikam. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Text 30. Sadhi bhuta dhyadvam mam sadhyanam chaye vidhu vayana kale picha mam tavidur yukchetasa. Those who follow me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who knows me as the one underlying all the demigods, and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can with steadfast mind understand and know me even at the time of death. Chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, Text 1. Arjuna uvacha kim tad brahma kim atyadmam kim karma purushottama adhi bhutam cha kim proktam adhi vayam kim uchyate. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Text 2. Adhi yagya katam krota dehismin madhusudana rayana kalecha katam genosi yatadam vidbihi. Translation. How does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body? And in which part does he live? O Madhusudana, and how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Text 3. Shri Bhagavan uvacha aksaram brahma paramam svabhavo daityamam uchyate bhuta bhavad bhavakaro vishaga kama samgitaha. The Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruitive activities. Text number 4. Adhi bhutam sarobhava paruchaschadhayavatam adhyagyo hamevatra dehi deha pitambara. Physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the Supersoul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. Text 5. Anta kalecha mam eva smaran mukva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samsaya. And whoever, at the time of death, quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Text 6. Yam yam vapi smarabhavam tyajat yante kalevaram tam tam ivaiti konteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Translation. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. And last text, number 7. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudacha maya prita manobudhir mame vaisyasaram shata. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Okay, we'll go back to chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text 28. On page 387 in the temple room, the translation reads, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. Purport: those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously and have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, gradually, they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness, in the association of pure devotees who can deliver one from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So like Prabhupada's speaking about in the purport, when somebody gets to a certain level, or they study for some time and they get a certain realization, they get a certain happiness, certain amount of faith in the Lord, they can't help but want to give it away and help other people. So this is what the devotees are traversing the earth doing. This is why we're Goshtaranandi. This movement is Goshtaranandi, not Bhajananandi. Maybe some may be inclined to, or think they're inclined in the beginning to this Bhajananandi life, but realistically, the real advanced ones that are following in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps, they want to give this transcendental knowledge to other people. And this is often a very nice way to please the devotees, please the spiritual master, please Srila Prabhupada. He would always speak of this transcendental book distribution as the highest service. So, as much as we can, we should be preaching and connecting all of our activities with preaching. Because it's, some are more inclined to be out on the battlefield, and some are more inclined to be away from the fight. But the warrior who is, the military man who is stationed at, the center, minding the computers, he's just as important as the person who is actually out in battle. So we can connect all of our services to preaching in this way, and in this way, connect the fallen jiva souls back to their original constitutional position by helping in some way to facilitate their spiritual growth. Now, Krishna is talking about the qualification of these people and the type of yoga that these people practice, which is known as bhakti yoga, as we know, and how they can actually not only come to this path, but continue it with real determination, with steadfastness, to stick to it and not, go away. So yesterday, I remember Ananda was speaking about the 4 types of people that come to devotional service. Can we remember those off the top of our head? You can just shout them out.
The inquisitive.
Inquisitive, distressed, seeking knowledge. Yes. Yes, very good. So yeah, these 4, they come to devotional service in some way, which it's all a very high platform, like Ananda was saying yesterday. And they all include the highest one, which is they're seeking knowledge about the absolute truth. All 4 of these include this, whether somebody's coming for the distressed reason or, inquisitive, whichever one of the 4 it is, it's including the highest. And Krishna is letting us know these different things that we need to know and practice in order to kind of move up a grade in this bhakti. Just like when you're in school. There's 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, high school, college, maybe. Just like that, in devotional service, there's different grades to practicing. And Krishna is letting us know how to stay on the path and continue in this. Okay. Bhajanti bhajan. It means not just chanting, not just bhajan, or a lot of times we think of, some prayerful music when we think of bhajan, but it means, in this verse, Prabhupada's connecting it with any spiritual activity at all, our bhajan. So it just doesn't mean chanting in this connection. He's referring to all the different aspects in bhakti yoga. And this yoga is for those who are eligible. And, what is it that makes somebody eligible to practice bhakti yoga? Good. Association.
Surrender to the spiritual master.
Surrender to the spiritual master. Yes. Those are all good. Krishna talks about we have to have pious activity in our last lives in order to come to this bhakti yoga platform. So somebody might think, oh yeah, that's in my last life. How do I actually know my last life, right? How do I know if I did anything pious? But you did something very pious in your last life. This is what Krishna is saying. Yeah, you. I'm pointing to you. Everybody here has done something very pious in their last life. Or otherwise, we wouldn't come to bhakti yoga. So, coming in contact with these devotees of the Lord, it's arranged by the will of the Lord. It's causeless, but Prabhupada is saying we had some piety in our last lives. And in order to practice this bhakti path, we must be free from impious action, right? And what is impious action, you ask? Well, a pious life, first of all, we'll define that. A pious life is, regulated in your eating, your sleeping, proper communication. Pious life means staying away from, intoxication, abiding by the 4 regs, living a God-centered life. Whereas an impious is just the opposite. Somebody is engaging in intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, unnecessary cruelty to other living entities, This is very impious, these things. For instance, when somebody practices impious action, there's negative results. We can see that firsthand. For instance, like if somebody drinks alcohol, automatically they're going to start some kind of thing. They're going to start some confrontation, or, it creates problems, these impious actions. It happens with all of these. So in order to practice Bhakti Yoga, Krishna is saying we have to stay away from these impious activities. For instance, it's like if somebody meets devotees and he's trying to chant and he's trying to practice the life of a devotee, following the footsteps, he might not be at the platform of living a pious life yet. He still may have so many impious conditionings that he's, been doing for his whole life, for a lot of us for 20 years. So if this person, if he starts chanting Hare Krishna, but he goes on with all of these impious activities, after some time, it's going to be like trying to light a fire, but he's pouring water on the fire before he's trying to light it. It's very difficult to progress in this path of bhakti while you're still doing impious things. Now, with that being said, we have to have something that saves us from our sinful life, and this is the process. So I'm not saying that right away that everyone, chant Hare Krishna one time and everybody's not going to ever touch their preconditionings. But it's something that we should slowly be able to detach ourselves from, and that's how we know that this process is working. Our material longing is lessening, right? And this is very, very blatant at the beginning of spiritual life. People are seeing all these conditionings falling right away when they start practicing Krishna consciousness. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. So living piously, it's not something that they teach in college. It's not knowledge you get from college. It's, something that hopefully your parents taught you, or your grandparents, or whoever brought you up. But if they didn't teach that to you, unfortunately, we have so many conditionings and bad habits. For instance, who would have thought to eat, your mother's home-cooked meal would be a sinful activity? But it really is. And a lot of us, when we actually thought about it for the first time, that, wow, my whole family, we got to kill this animal just to satisfy our palate. A lot of us may start questioning things. This may have been a first red flag for some people, that what they've been being told their whole life is a lie. And it's because this age that we live in, the Kali Yuga, it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Everybody's lying. Nobody knows right from wrong. It's a very sinful and degraded age. But luckily, we're only 500 years away from the advent of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He just came. So we're in the golden age. We're just a few generations from God showing us how to behave as a devotee. So we have a perfect example in a relatively short time of how to behave perfectly. Thank God he came. Thank you, Lord Chaitanya. And that's what this movement is about. And similarly, there's other religious movements where they have a pure representative who came and tried to show just that. So if somebody is following a guru purely without deviating it for his own sense gratification, there are plenty of bona fide paths that lead to God, like the path of Jesus Christ or, Muhammad. These are pure paths. But unfortunately, our senses are impure and our mind is impure. So when you put a pure path on paper, and you give it to other people to manipulate and change, the path itself becomes impure. And this is the importance of our parampara system. Because this guru-disciple relationship, it is one that we do not deviate what the spiritual master presents to us, and we present it as purely as we can to the next. And this is a very, very important thing in the spreading of any type of religious movement, and we're not seeing it anywhere else in the world. So this bhakti yoga Krishna is talking about, it makes us free. It makes us free from these sinful activities that we've accumulated, these poor habits. It actually eradicates these sins. And yes, Prabhu. Okay. So text 30, those who know me as the Supreme Lord as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can with a steadfast mind understand and know me, even at the time of death. Yes, I did. I didn't read 29. Thank you, Prabhu. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death by taking refuge in me in devotional service, they are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. So these people, they actually know the difference. These people who are situated in Brahman, the brahmacharis, the real brahmacharis, they know the difference between illusion and delusion. They turn that reflection that they're seeing of the apple tree in the pond upside down. And they actually get to see the real thing. I misspoke. They know the difference between reality and delusion, not illusion and delusion. Those are very similar. Yeah, they know the difference between reality and delusion. They're flipping this apple tree in the pond, they're seeing the reflection, and it looks like it's upside down, and they're looking up, and they're seeing reality. They're seeing the real apple tree. And the whole world, they're believing this temporary display of material nature. That's what is occupying their mind. That is what they're after. Just a fleeting temporary display of material nature. And it all disintegrates so quickly. But these people, they're mad after it. So, a funny exercise we could do, and even in the streets, going out on books, or you see somebody, you can ask them, "Are you in reality?" And they'll say, "Yes, I'm absolutely in reality." I say, "What is your definition of reality, sir? You say you're living in reality, but can you define it?" And he scratches his head. Well, we can supply the definition of reality as something that endures forever. This is really reality. And then we can ask him, "So are you in reality? Are you living after, are you pursuing reality? Something that endures forever?" Well, we know his body is going to go, his family is going to go, his job that he's working so hard that he's checking his watch, rushing to try to get to work on time, that's going to go surely, just in a matter of years. But these people, they think they're living in reality, but they're just living in illusion. They're chasing temporary things. Their whole consciousness is focused on these temporary things. So when you are situated, or when you're pursuing something that is actually reality, something that endures forever, you become free from all anxiety. This is what Krishna says. You don't have anything to fear, because all of this anxiety, it's from all of these things that are fleeting. You're worried, "Oh man, I got to pay for my car," or I gotta pay for my apartment, my house. I gotta look after my family. All of these things are very fleeting. It's not the highest thing to pursue. Krishna provides for your family, for your car, if you're living piously. But if you're accumulating a heap of karmic load, so many negative, sinful reactions, you're going about to take the stress off of daily life because you're totally in anxiety because you've accumulated wealth, and you think that getting more and more is going to make you happier and happier, but in reality it's just making you more and more anxious and more stressed. And you have to take off that stress somehow, so you result to sinful activities because you don't know any better. This karmic load is just going to make you more anxious and you're going to go crazy. So this is why the material world is all crazy. So the devotees, they know we have to pursue Krishna. We have to try to think about Krishna all the time and serve him, render loving devotional service to him. And in this way, we become sane very slowly from our very conditioned state. So just serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the only way. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Is it okay if I make a quick comment on the last verse that you read before this one?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I was thinking of this pious in Srimad Bhagavatam and in other places. It's described that there's different types of pious activities. In relation to those cowherd boys who are playing with Krishna, there's a verse that's saying Kritam something punyama. So much pious activities they must have performed to be playing with the absolute personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada talks about that there's different types of pious, but real pious is to be a devotee of Krishna. And you can do pious activities that are for sense. You get some karmic reaction, you get some fall, some fruit that you can enjoy, or you can get pious credits that goes towards liberation. But the pious activity that they performed was actually bhaktiyan muksakriti. So it's a very particular type of pious that's only done by performing devotional service. So in this verse, they must have performed piously in previous lives. It's not these karmic pious activities or these pious activities towards liberation, but it's actually either bhaktiyan muksakriti or agyata sukriti, which is unknowingly performing devotional service by the mercy of devotees. And Prabhupada makes this point earlier in the Bhagavad Gita when he defines in that verse, that famous verse, paritranaya sadhunam. Sadhunam, or those who are pious, Krishna's delivering. Prabhupada says, according to Bhagavad Gita, sadhu, or holy man, is a man in Krishna consciousness. So he makes it clear. Pious is activities in Krishna consciousness. This is who Krishna is actually referring to. That's real pious activity. All the other pious activities may be really religious for the sake of sense gratification or even for the sake of liberation, actually, which is not real piety. And therefore, in the purport, Prabhupada is alluding to this when he's saying, the impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as a subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. So it's sinful to not know that you're a devotee, you're a servant of God, actually. If you perform activity, it's not real piety, all those other activities outside of devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bo. Yeah, thanks for your nice comment, Prabhu. Yeah, so Agyata Sukriti, we've all performed it, unknowingly in the past, or even knowingly, depending. And we've been all given births that follow what Krishna says. A yogi who practices for some time and then falls away, he achieves a birth in a wealthy family or in a devotee's family, right? So we're all in the US, the wealthiest country. We're all young. We've all come to this at a certain age. So we have performed this devotional service, and in a past life, whether it was knowingly or unknowingly. It's a very nice clarification. So, in chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, Arjuna starts out by asking a couple of questions. Arjuna inquires, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are the fruits of activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. And then the next text, how does this Lord of sacrifice live in the body? And in which part does he live, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So, a lot of times when we're hearing someone speak, we kind of nod and say yes, even though we might have missed something that they said. Does anyone have experience with this? Yeah, it's like to not bother the speaker, or it's maybe part of the ego to, we want to seem smarter than we are, or, we don't want this person to think we're dumb because we're asking questions. But Arjuna, we see he's totally free of this ego. It's already the 8th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's been speaking this for 45 minutes or an hour, and then Arjuna just comes out with some questions, and he's like, Lord, please answer these questions for me. And he's not worried that God's going to think, you're just now asking questions? I've been speaking for this hour, and, have you been sleeping this whole time? Or, what's up? Are you not smart or something you can't understand? No, he's asking these questions, but he's not necessarily asking for himself. He's more than likely asking these questions for us, so we can learn from them. So he asks quite a few questions here in the first couple verses. And, Prabhupada, he writes in the purport to the Bhagavad Gita that there's 3 different parts of the Gita, right? He talks about the first 6 chapters, and then the middle 6 chapters, and then the last chapters. Does anybody remember what he says about these? They're explaining.
I remember part of a purport where he says the middle chapters are the most important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the middle chapters are describing bhakti yoga, devotional service to the Supreme. And then the final chapters are kind of the jnana yoga, because they're explaining why. It's validating why bhakti is the Supreme. And then the first 6 chapters are describing different paths of yoga, ultimately culminating in bhakti yoga. Prabhupada actually, in the last verse of virtually almost every last verse of the text of the chapter, he's saying, in conclusion, bhakti yoga. He's not letting us miss it. If we're reading the purports, we won't miss it. In fact, one can probably just read the last verse of every chapter, and they'll get a good understanding. Actually, one can probably read 1 or 2 verses of the Gita and get even 1 or 2 words, actually. If one reads devotional service and he understands that, he's got a good grasp on the Bhagavad Gita. Yet there are so many people that are explaining the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and their conclusions are something else than devotional service. But these people, they may appear as, good preachers or much educated, but in reality, what's the use? If they're not describing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they don't have a proper understanding of these scriptures. There's I was hearing this morning a nice pastime of I don't remember the devotee's name, so I won't get into it. But basically, I guess I said it. So this devotee, he had committed some type of offense. So he was very learned, and he was preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. He was every day. But Lord Chaitanya was saying, this person, he's nonsense. He actually can't understand this due to some offenses to the Vaishnavas. He offend Srivas Thakur, and he can't understand it. So to listen to this person, it does no good, because the ultimate conclusion of these scriptures is not anything else besides devotional service. And unfortunately, that's not what the Bhagavad Gita, the other 500 or 700 versions of Bhagavad Gita are pointing at. It's only Bhagavad Gita as it is, because this is not Bhagavad Gita as it isn't. Let me interpret it my own way, because I think I'm God. It's, let's serve God. We're His servants. So, there's some questions being asked by Arjuna to Krishna, and Krishna responds in text 3. The indestructible, transcendental, living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruit of activities. So Krishna is beginning to answer Arjuna. Text 4, physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the Supersoul dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone at once, attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So these verses are very similar, 5 and 6. They're describing how this point of death it's the most crucial time of one's life, actually. And everybody in the material world is busy trying to avoid thinking about it. They're trying to numb themselves out when the time is starting to come, in different hospital situations, or they'll do anything not to think about death because they're terrified of it. Whereas the devotee, that's a little different. There was one time I was hearing where Srila Prabhupada, he was initiating a devotee in Chicago, and Maharaj was actually there for the initiation. And it was a unique initiation, because one of the people getting initiated, he had some terminal illness and he was about to die. And he went to Prabhupada and asked for initiation, and he said, I want to remember Krishna. And Prabhupada, he initiated him as the only Babaji in our movement. And he said, you go to Vrindavan, you chant at least 64 rounds a day, you take whatever food comes your way, without extra strenuous effort, and you live in this way until you pass your life. And this devotee went on and he tried it out, and he actually got word that he wasn't going to die quickly. So what does that say? Prabhupada didn't initiate another Babaji. Nobody else in our movement has, had that title since. Because, it kind of shows you something. I'm not really going to speak further. It's not good to speak about, devotees' downfall or anything, but it's a good example to think about. He was trying to think of Krishna at the time of death, and then he realized his death wasn't coming so soon. So the devotee, he's not afraid of death. He's not afraid of the topic. Prabhupada said that the Mahabhagavat, or the the highest level devotee, he's thinking, I could die at any moment. So this is a good consciousness to try to develop over time. Because if you're thinking that I could die at every moment, then all this devotional service that you're trying to practice and all of these names of the Lord that you're chanting, it puts some depth to it. It's not that we're just chanting thinking, oh, I got 40 years, I got 50 years. No, that's not the proper mood. We should be thinking, I can go at any minute. Therefore, let me chant with utmost sincerity. Let me try to do my service to the best of my ability to please the devotees. And in this way, pray that we'll be able to remember you at the time of death, because this is crucial. Like if a devotee gets in, some type of dangerous situation in a car or while traveling, this may happen sometimes. Is it that they're screaming when they slam on the brakes, when they're real close to getting in an accident, slam on the brakes? Are they screaming? Are they saying, oh no? Are they freezing up? Or are they chanting? These times when danger comes and the adrenaline gets pumping, the body, it starts sweating or it starts locking up, different things come. These are not easy times to remember Krishna for somebody who has not had sufficient practice. When we think we're going to leave our body, it's the most terrifying thing. If you're not completely faithful in where you're going to go, and you don't know the proper way to leave, it's terrifying. I've read so many instances of people, thinking they're going to leave their body and they start shaking. It's very difficult. Their voice might, they might not be able to chant properly, or their voice might be faltering, because it's a scary transition. But if we have full faith and we spend our life practicing, then surely we'll be able to remember him. And the spiritual master, he's always engaged in showing his disciples and pushing his disciples to always live in this way, where you do your service to the best of your capacity all the time. Just like a football coach, right? He's going to encourage his player to not slack off at practice. Because if you're practicing 5 days a week and then you have 2 games on the weekend, but you're spending those 5 days during the week just slacking off and goofing off in practice, when it's time to get down to the real game, are you really going to be good? Are you going to have the skill? Is it going to show? So the spiritual master is expert at engaging us in trying to always remember Krishna. Whatever way he sees fit in that time, place, and circumstance. So we're just about out of time. Are there any comments or questions that we can take? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for your class, Prabhu. So
Very well.
I have a question. Basically, I remember this touches on the point that you made when you asked the stranger, are you in reality? I remember having this debate with some guy, and he kept saying that after I die, it's over. My body goes in the dirt and I no longer exist. Everything is temporary. And I tried to debate him. It's hard when someone's that dense. But so if you ask someone, are you in reality? And they say, yes, I'm in reality because I realize that everything is actually temporary. There's nothing that's eternal. How do you refute that?
Well, their knowledge is not it's not that it's wrong, but it's not that it's right. It's incomplete. Because everything is temporary. Everything material is temporary. According to their knowledge, all they know is material energy. Whereas they don't know the first thing about spiritual energy. And the way there's a spiritual bank account. This is how I would answer it. There's a spiritual bank account that stays with your soul. Your subtle body, it stays with your soul. So all the things that have made up your subtle body, all of these reactions that you've done your entire life, all of these desires that you formulated, they stay with your subtle body. So at the time of death, if somebody is living like a holy man and remembering God all the time, naturally his subtle body is going to go back to Krishna. If he is remembering dog, he's going to go live amongst the dogs. If he is remembering sex life or family life, he is going to live just as that. Somebody who's very attached to their family, what are they going to think about at the time of death? They're going to think about their family. So when you render devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that stays with your subtle body. It's like a spiritual bank account. We hear that example quite a bit. So you're putting in money, you're depositing money into this account. And you can't take any out of it. It just keeps accumulating. So when somebody dies, if they're born and they have 45%, and like Ananda was saying, they might render some devotional service unknowingly, agata sukriti. They might get 5% more in their bank account. Now they have 50%. And their next body, they're going to take a body according to what they remember at death. And hopefully that body gives them proper facility to render more devotional service. But these spiritual activities, they're not temporary, they're eternal. The soul is eternal. It's without birth, it never dies. So in that way, we can explain to him that actually the soul is not temporary. You may not have come across the knowledge yet about the soul, my good sir. Here it is. Please take a book and you can educate yourself about things that are not so temporary. And then you can be striving to live your life according to something that is not temporary. Because you see, thus far, you've lived, pursuing this temporary, material, fleeting energy, and it has not satisfied you. So why not try pursuing the things that are not temporary, the things that are eternal, the spiritual activities? So people can be awfully dense out there, and a lot of their habits are, it might keep them at first from understanding this knowledge. Like Krishna was talking about, you have to qualify yourself to understand this knowledge. In the 28th verse, 29th verse, he was kind of speaking of this. So if one does not have the proper qualifications to understand it, it can be difficult presenting it, in that factor of the matter way with somebody out on the street like that. So it's really best to do as little talking as possible on these preaching missions, which is literally just letting, the pure Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada, do the preaching, just making sure they take home the book. But I don't know, that's one way that comes to mind. I hope it satisfied your question. If anyone else has another way that comes to mind, that would be great. Or any other comments or questions? Okay, Haribo. Thank you for tolerating me, dear devotees. Vanchakalpatarubhischa kripa sindhuvyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.